Recently, I posted a video comparing the original adaptation of Trigun to Trigun Stampede, and while the majority of people who watched that video were completely fine and reasonable, there have been quite a few comments addressing some things I said in my video in a way that was very snarky and condescending, so I decided to make a video about them. Fair warning, some of the parts of this video get a little ranty, so yeah, hope you enjoy it. Also, if my voice sounds a little weird, I might be a little sick. I think by far the most common comment I get on that video now is people trying to defend the scene at the end of the first episode where Vash picks up the rock and shoots it to get rid of the missiles in the sky. Let me first say that my point in that part of the video wasn't that there was no justification for Vash to grab the rock at the end. My point was that the storyboarding in that part of the episode is so sloppy that not everybody will be able to tell what the point of that rock was, and that's provable by reading some of the responses I've gotten from my comment section. Out of all of the comments that I've gotten on the matter, I'd say like 50% of them had the same justification for why Vash needed that rock at the end, while the other 50% either had a different justification or just straight up said, yeah, that scene didn't make sense to me as well. While I did say in my video that I couldn't think of a reason why Vash would do this, that wasn't me saying that there was no reason, that was me saying that the reason he had for doing that was very sloppily conveyed to the audience. So to all of the people who gave me an accurate explanation of why the rock was necessary, thank you for telling me, but this is still a failing of the show because it wasn't able to properly convey that reasoning to the audience. And again, this isn't something I just based off of my own viewing experience, it was something that I based off of the perspectives of other people in my comment section. The next comment I'd like to address is one that's surprisingly common, even though I specifically said something about this in the beginning of my video. There are so many comments saying, I don't get why everybody hates the CGI, it looks great, but it's weird that they're writing a comment addressed to me about that because I said in the beginning of my video that the CGI wasn't the main problem with the new Trigun for me. I had a bad first impression of it from the trailers, but when I sat down and watched the show, I said I got used to it. None of my legitimate gripes were about the CGI, they were all about the portrayal of the characters as well as some elements of the storyboarding. This next comment is a bit related to that actually. I don't like it when people very snarkily and passive-aggressively bring up other anime made by Studio Orange as if that means anything. If you just talked about anime like Lands of the Lustrous or Beastars, chances are I was fine with you, but if you did it in a sarcastic sense as if you were so above it all, that's where I start to have issues. I've hidden these comments so you won't find them anymore, but I've gotten people saying things like, tell me you haven't watched Hoseki no Kuni without telling me you haven't watched Hoseki no Kuni, obviously implying that I don't know what I'm talking about because I didn't watch the show or whatever, but they completely fail to realize that this type of comment doesn't end up saying anything of substance whatsoever. I am criticizing Trigun Stampede, not because of its CGI, but because of how it represents the characters of Trigun, so how does bringing up an entirely separate anime that was made by the same studio correlate to what I'm saying in any way? JC Staff made Toradora, which is in my, and I'd assume a lot of other people's opinion, one of the best romance anime ever. That doesn't make One Punch Man Season 2 any less shit than it is. That doesn't mean Strongest Sage with the Weakest Crest is some literary masterpiece now. Just because a studio made a good anime doesn't mean that every anime they ever make will be good. That's just not how that works. Another comment I got said something along the lines of, oh, you keep saying the writer's this and the writer's that, but last time I checked, the person making the story for this reboot is the author of the Trigun manga. So I'm gonna continue enjoying this, thank you very much. So fucking condescending. First of all, if the Trigun manga author is the one making the story for Stampede, then he is a writer. It's not incorrect to refer to him as a writer. And second of all, I never said you couldn't enjoy the new adaptation. Why do you care so much about my opinion? Why does your enjoyment of the show have to be affected by what other people say about it? Now, because I'm such a small channel, I obviously get some comments talking about how I'm just some random ass dude on the internet, and while this type of comment has already been butt-fucked in the ass by several other people online, it still comes up a lot and I still want to talk about it. Everybody already knows that it's stupid to dismiss someone's opinion about something based on the amount of online followers they have, but even if that wasn't the case, all of the people leaving comments like this have less subscribers than me, so their own comments and opinions are invalidated by their own fucking logic. On to the next one. Every time I make a comparison video like this, I always get these people who try to dismiss all of my critiques of the reboot because the original adaptation will always exist. If you don't like the new one, just watch the old one. And this is all kinds of backwards in so many ways. Let me just say, it's okay for you personally not to be offended by the remake of another show because you'll always have the original to fall back on, but using that as an excuse to ignore legitimate gripes that people have with that show is not okay, because regardless of the fact that the original adaptation exists, the flaws of its reboot will also exist, and maybe that's not enough to get my point across. Maybe I have to show everybody how stupid this argument is by using it in another context. As it turns out, recently recently, the world's decided to give me the perfect example to use. The Velma Show. That's a reboot of Scooby-Doo, yet you don't hear anybody going, don't make fun of the Velma Show because the other adaptations of Scooby-Doo are a thing. Anybody who says that would and should be clowned on, because when used to defend something so blatantly terrible, this argument's flaws become so much more apparent. So how come you can use that defense for Trigun, or even fucking Shaman King? Like, no joke, there were people adamantly defending the remake of that show when it first came out, and with that exact argument too. There was this one interaction I had with a commenter where he said that I was being too hard on Shaman King because it's a kid's show, and then I responded to that person by saying that the original Shaman King was also a kid's show, yet it was good, and you know what he said back to me? Well, you can watch the original anytime, which doesn't even make sense as a response to what I said, because the entire point of your comment was that I shouldn't criticize the new Shaman King because it's a kid's show, so I brought up another kid's show which was very high quality stuff, and then you just completely changed what you were arguing about. Just whatever. The point is, there's no logic to this argument, and I haven't even mentioned how hypocritical it is, because oftentimes the people saying this shit are the ones who will just throw away the original and say it has nothing to offer in comparison to the new adaptation. Like, look at the original FMA, for example, a show that I love to death. Nobody cares about it anymore. Fruits Basket, nobody cares. Horimiya, you didn't even know there was an old adaptation. And I know for a fact that if Shaman King 2021 was just a little more competent, everybody would throw away the old one, because at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. These old anime are so dispensable now because newer, shinier versions of it exist, and I don't like that. I don't want that to happen to Trigun because I love that show, which is why I made a video about it, and I'm glad a lot of other people seem to love it just as much as me. Lastly, I kind of want to go back to that whole thing with Trigun's author, and I don't know how true it is that he's the one making the story for the new Trigun, but if it is true, then I doubly don't know how to feel about this adaptation, because when a creator goes back and tries to improve on what they've made before, I just feel like that's a dangerous thing to do. I'm not saying that this is what happened in this case, but when a creator isn't confident in their work, it's really easy for them to make changes and morph their creation into something that misses the point of what made it so special in the first place. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for making changes to the source material. Like I said before, one of my favorite shows is FMA 2003, and apparently the original Trigun didn't fully adapt the manga, but the issue is that Stampede just makes everything less interesting. I think someone in my comment section said it best. He said that he couldn't see the new characters as anything more than plot progressors, and that pretty much sums up all of the problems with these characters. With every one of them, you can feel every ounce of charm that was once so present in the original now being replaced by something infinitely more generic and replaceable. These characters aren't valued because of their personalities, they're valued because they only say expository and plot-related shit, and I feel like that's why there are quite a few Trigun fans who are disappointed with Stampede. It's not about the CGI or the fact that we're nostalgia biased, which is another argument that people use to easily dismiss someone else's opinion, even though we can just as easily say you have recency bias, but that's not the point. It's because this isn't really Trigun, even if it was made by the same creator, because if it was, this just seems like a corrective measure that wasn't really necessary. I'm glad that a lot of new and old fans alike can enjoy the new Trigun though, and I hope no one takes this video as me trying to devalue or make fun of anyone else's opinion. As long as you voiced your opinion in a way that's respectful and didn't use any of these stupid arguments, there's nothing wrong with you liking this show. That's all for now, and I'll be going now.